Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Unhuman. So, this is a Blumhouse film, and immediately I groaned because I'm like, you know what? Normally, a lot of Blumhouse doesn't give me this kind of thumbs up feeling at the end of a film. And so, I would go on and say for this movie, there is a real true bubble of time within this movie that I had real legitimate interest in. The kind of twist or the idea that is to be within this bubble of time within this movie. I was like, wow, that sounds so cool. Like, man, that just seems to try to twist the whole zombie thing. And I thought that that was so cool. Like, once we get like 55 minutes in, I was like, man, this is some interesting. But then eventually, after the dust is to settle on that idea, and we go right back into the action and whatever, then eventually that slips away. So, honestly, within an hour and 30-minute movie, there's just a lot of generic just going on in between that little bubble of me going like, wow, that's cool, but it's not enough to save this film. So really, I would have to say, like, if you were just interested in the twist or the hook, when we get into spoilers, I will immediately say what that hook is. So immediately my grading of this movie has to be that it's an awful film because you can just go on and watch a number of things that is just like this movie. You can go on and watch a way better zombie thing than this film. You can go on and watch Freakish, which I think is currently on Hulu. You can go on and watch Daybreak, which is currently on Netflix, which will kind of feel more creative than this movie. And both of these things that I just mentioned are shows, so you can get a whole lot of mileage out of that. You can go on and watch this kind of very goofy but interesting movie called Freak of Nature or Freaks of Nature. Either way, it's a movie with Dennis Leary, and eventually, like, that will be like the kitchen sink of horror, and it'll be like kind of a goofy horror film that is to be really fun, and I would recommend that. It has like some kind of like high school kind of flavor to it. So yeah, like, it's interesting and it's funny. Anyways, so but yeah, so this movie is supposedly available for $6.99 through Amazon's and whatever, but I'll give you a couple apps that hopefully you'll be able to see this at some point for free, because normally I list these off for a number of premium access stuff. So with that said, right out of the gate, I'll rattle these things off for you. So going through a Google search, I hope that you can find any number of these things, because I want eventually everyone to be able to go on and see all this stuff for absolutely free with ads and stuff that are kind of placed within the movie, but it is what it is because somebody has to make their money somehow. So with that said, go into a Google search and search the word see one of these movies app. So see movies app, and hopefully you'll be able, through a Google search, be able to find this app, be able to download it, and then be able to see whatever you like. Premium access stuff that you would have to go on and exclusively have an app for, like Apple TV or Stars or something, by and large, that you would probably have to pay a monthly fee to be able to get into. You can get into anything, it seems, almost for absolutely free. There's sometimes where you can exhaust this search engine and be able to miraculously not find something. But oftentimes it's probably because it's a brand new movie that just came out, or you'll probably have to see like the bootleg weird copy of a movie that is, to me, not all that good in quality just because it just came out for whatever reason. But moving on, you can also go onto a Google search and search the word Fox HD Movies app. Regardless of what I say next, maybe any number of these words could probably help you find this app a little bit better, but whatever. Because eventually you'll hopefully go on and find an app where Fox HD Movies is the logo. The title will say something different. It'll say play 1080p HD movies. So maybe any of those words will eventually help you stumble upon that other app that I just rattled off and mentioned. You can also hopefully go on, and this movie may not be available on this app, but maybe at some point it will be, or eventually you can go on and see a number of other things for free anyways. You can go into a Google Play Store and be able to search the words TV Crush, this is 2 words, and then be able to find a logo that says HD Movies with a kind of crown or king crown off to the side. You can download that app and hopefully be able to watch any number of things that may not be Unhuman, but may be any number of other things that are absolutely free. Maybe any in the number of movies that I would say to go out of your way to watch instead of this, like Freaks of Nature, Daybreak, or Freakish. But anyways, with that said, teeing it up, what is this movie about? So we have a number of kids who are to make their way to school to go on to this field trip, and this field trip leads them into finding a zombie that is to start to chew through these students' teachers, and this is to lead all these students to go into this abandoned kind of weird, kooky apartment complex that is to have this zombie like graffiti. So it seems like these characters were meant to go to this location. And once they go to this location, they realize that it seems that these people were technically chosen to go to this location. And they're kind of baffled and confused by that. But it seems that the more and more we go along within this adventure, we find out that survival is to eventually be that these characters are trying to escape their way or to try to eventually stall their way into trying to avoid being killed by these zombies. And then eventually we find out what the hook is, and then it comes on to having one character trying to save a number of characters, and I'll explain why within the hook of everything. So if you want to know exactly what the hook is, I will immediately say that in spoilers, what the twist is of this movie. So eventually, if you just want to know what the twist is, and maybe you might be more interested, just kind of hear within the spoilers of it, or you can just kind of go on and just say like, hey, yeah, like he says that this movie's awful, I'm not interested, I'm not going to pay $6.99 whatever with tax to watch this film, whatever. Like I can go and watch a number of other zombie things and be content with that. As which that he has gone on and told me of a number of things to watch instead. So, with that said, let's just go into that double 5 time territory, because it's about that time yet again to go into this thing called spoiler time. Spoiler time, it's about that time I'm going to spoil this movie. There might be like some people out there that will probably say that this actually was a good film. Or there's somebody that could go on and immediately just like, your opinion, just right on the money. So, the twist of this film that I'm going to mention right now, so spoilers, this is a zombie movie that is not a zombie movie. And a lot of people will be baffled and confused, but that's what the twist is. Come to find out, we have a number of kids who had planned this for a long time, and they are to use this drug that is to make certain kids, make it give the illusion like they are zombies temporarily, but you have to go on and keep dosing these people with this drug to give the impression that these characters are to be zombies, but they're really not. They're just hooked on this drug. We just have two characters who are wanting to go on and get even with these kind of jock bully like guys, and so they decide that they want to go on and have this ultimate plan to kill off all these jocks, these guys that have always tortured them, or really just have it to where everyone is to kind of kill everyone off, and eventually they are going to be the last survivors of this whole story. And eventually it seems that at some point a person is to figure out what these people's plan are as they go on and they divulge every single bit of it, because they're villains and they have to go on and just spill about this whole entire idea. So with that said, now let's get to the generic part of the film. Most of everything. So in the very beginning of this film, we of course have Ever, who is at home with her mother, and so it seems that Ever is to go on and like put together a lunch for her mother, and then is to supposedly turn around and already have a lunch for herself. And so Ever is to go on and go with Tamra to drive their way to school, and they are to accidentally, because Tamra isn't looking, almost run over a kid named Randall. Randall is to smash into these trash cans, and all of a sudden Tamra is running out and saying like, "Oh, hey Randall, are you okay?" And Randall's like, "Yeah, I think I'll live." And all of a sudden it seems that Tamra and Randall have this kind of look between one another, like, "Yeah, I want to give me some of that." So all of a sudden, while Randall is talking to Tamra, and we have this like, "Yeah, I think I'm okay" business, we all of a sudden have a guy named Daniel, or no, Danny, who is to go on and chuck this slushy right onto Randall, splashing him all over his chest. And so Randall is like, "Oh my god, like, you hit me." And Danny's like, "Well, yeah, but I wanted to really hit your face." And so Danny, with a number of other jocks and preppy kids and JC, who is to be this kind of blonde ambition girl, and so on and so forth, who eventually is to break her nose, and we are to laugh. We go on and have them just drive by, and so everybody is to like go on as normal and just like, "Okay, well, as long as you're okay." And so they kind of drive off and get to school. So we have Mr. Lorenzo, who is to have this extra credit field trip for all these students. And so Mr. Lorenzo is to want to go and collect every single cell phone from all these characters, because he wants them to be in IRL. So immediately, if I were to be this student, I would go on and just be like, "You know what, I'm just going to turn my cell phone off. Like, I'm not just going to give away my cell phone to some teacher. Like, I'll just turn my cell phone off." But every single one of these students are to go on and give this teacher their cell phone. Or we have, of course, Ever, who mentions to Mr. Lorenzo that she never has a cell phone. And Mr. Lorenzo's like, "Really? Like, that's kind of 2006 of you, but okay, all right. Like, I'll believe you." So all these students get into this bus, and we have a bus driver that I guess to be fairly unreliable. Like, this bus driver, who I believe is Wayne, is to, I guess, be a druggy like guy. And so very, like I said, unreliable. So we have a number of people that are to be showcased briefly within this bus. Some of them are to go on and say that they got on the wrong bus at some point, and because they're not like a real focused player within this, we just need bodies within this bus, and so some of these people just end up being like presented but then forgotten about because there's only a certain real selection of people that are really going to be in this film. So we go on into this film and have it at one point where the bus driver is to seem to have run over somebody as there is a spraying of blood upon this windshield. We have this bus that ends up crashing, and so all of a sudden Mr. Lorenzo is to notice that there is some injured kind of like biker looking guy who is kind of knocking on this door. And so Mr. Lorenzo is thinking like, oh, this guy could possibly need our help. And so Mr. Lorenzo is like, hey, hey guy, do you have any insurance? So Mr. Lorenzo tells the bus driver to open this door, and we also have it going over the loudspeaker that there is some emergency warning system that is to go on through the speakers of the bus to tell our characters that there is like martial law and all these things kind of going on, that all heck is breaking loose within the world. So all of a sudden we have the bus driver that is to open this door, and we immediately have this biker guy who eventually we find out is Chip attacking Mr. Lorenzo and just kind of ripping off some skin and so on and so forth, leaving Mr. Lorenzo to be taken down. And now everybody who is inside the bus is kind of running to the back of the bus to get to the fire exit to where they can jump off the back of the bus, which mostly just kind of leaves the girl with braces, that they just call her Braces for, like, that's the nickname of this character. We have her who is kind of left in the bus, and we really have everyone else who is to get from out of the back of the bus, which is really just basically everybody with the exclusion of Ryan and the bus driver, who is to be assumed dead, and which eventually we'll find out we'll see him later, and just a cluster of like rando people that like were to eventually just be background people that eventually will become zombies within this film. So because eventually they go on and they ask about like, well, hey, where is this character? Where is that character? It's like, well, hey, they're not really important enough to really legitimately have names. So let's forget about them. Like, we should just really focus on the people that we have still alive here. So we go on, and all the main focus characters are making their way to this abandoned apartment complex, it looks like. And we have, of course, this rave slash apartment complex where we have, of course, this zombie graffiti that is to be held outside of it, telling us that, like, yeah, this is not some, like, unique coincidence, that there's to be some real, like, chosen things going on here, and chosen visuals that are to be provided within this film. So we go on, and we have it at first where Danny is kind of telling everybody, hey, how about you guys go on and go throughout this place and try to hope that you can find some weapons and eventual things that we can go on and try to eventually defend ourselves. So everybody starts looking around, and we're seeing like a bunch of spray paint and a bunch of other things. So at some points we go on and have certain characters who are finding spears or like little tennis rackets, and so we go on and we start to have us believe that both Ever and Steven are probably going to end up together as a couple, as well as we also have Randall and Tamra, who were thinking like, oh, this might be a couple also. Yeah. I'm just thinking about the end of this film. So we go on and we have it to where the bus driver is to turn into a zombie and is to just kind of be on the outside part of here and is to try to make his way in, as well as the guy that we know as Chip is to also try to make his way in. So we have at one point the girl who is to be called Braces is outside of this place trying to find out where everyone else is, and she's kind of bleeding from her mouth. So we're kind of worried if she is to eventually already be a zombie or infected or whatever. So we have Braces, who is kind of outside, as we have Danny, who is to board up this door with this spear that he had taken from Randall, as they all get back to, of course, just kind of be in this one room because something's going to happen here. We have Ever that is screaming to the girl who's Braces, who I think is Candace, and is telling her to, like, hey, like, we're over here, like, come on, you can make it, kind of thing. So we have Braces, who is making her way to try to get into this place, and eventually we have one of the zombies, who I believe is who is Chip, kind of also attacking this girl. And so we eventually have a number of these zombies that are breaking through, and so that leads our characters to now have to try and go on and try to take down these zombies while they're also mostly just fleeing for their lives. So we go on and have at one point where Randall is to take this wood piece and is to smash down this bus driver, and everybody's like, oh my god, Randall, like, you saved us, so on and so forth. We figured out how to beat this zombie. So, but really, like, the door is to have been, like, kind of smashed through, and, like, it feels like this door was probably made out of paper. And so we go on and we transition our characters into another room that is to look very brave like, and is to have all of these kind of neon looking like kind of words appear, and is to say welcome, or is to say kind of some other kind of crappy kind of names of sorts. So we have these guys going through this rave, as well as them also finding also this one other room that is to have a number of mannequins that are to look all just like all of our characters that we see here, as well as every character that we also don't. So, but eventually we're in this rave part where all of a sudden we have this door that is to open, and a number of zombies are to all come in and start attacking all of our characters. And we have a character named Hunt who is to go on and try to punch away all these characters, as we have Randall, who is to find this secret door to eventually punch through to where everybody is kind of to slip away through here. We also have our team that is to go on and find a guy named Ryan. And so Ryan, I guess, is to have been, I guess, this character that is to be the heavy set character for whatever goofy reason. And because he has a tying with Danny for them to have gone to fat camp together, and I guess Danny hated the way he looked, so he drastically changed to this much thinner athletic character to, I guess, eventually become a jock so he can go on and be the popular guy. So we have them go on and sneak through this little opening, and eventually this leads us to discover that Danny was to somehow get poked uh, by the guy who is to be called Chip at some point in this film. And so we have it to where Hunt is now gone. He's no longer part of the group. He is to basically become a zombie character, and eventually we'll see him later on in the film. So Danny, it seems, is starting to show signs that he's starting to change. And so we go on and have everybody who are just like, yeah, should we be around him? Like, I think he's changing. As he's going on and grabbing another leather jacket that is to be on one of these mannequins because he's cold. So we have it to where we start to have people who are slowly but surely starting to become divided, where Ever is to want to have her own plan of going to this bus and possibly finding a number of their cell phones to try to see if they can get the heck out of here. And Randall has another plan of just kind of like, well, let's stay here, and eventually we'll try to like stay safe. And so like Ever and Randall are kind of contradicting one another about what like they should really do. So Ever is like, you know what, I'm gonna go on and do my own mission. So Ever is going on with Steven, the tennis racket guy, and she's making her way back to this bus because Ever is to come up with these spray cans and this kind of like towel of sorts to wrap around into an explosive that eventually is to light up this car to where the zombies end up getting really attracted by the heat. So Ever is to make her way to this bus to find a number of cell phones that are all broken, and eventually Ever is to make it to the front of this bus and realize that that emergency broadcast like thing that relayed over the bus stereos was just some fake tape, and that there might have been a reason that this whole thing was possibly a hoax. And so that's of course when Steven is to go on and drug Ever, and then Ever is to get the whole explanation of what was to really go on between Steven and Randall. So I guess Steven and Randall had been bullied by guys like Danny and Hunt and all these kind of preppy kids for their whole lives. And so now Randall and Steven are to go on and orchestrate this whole entire plan through these little pieces and this little maze and whatever. And so we have it to where Randall was to come up with the whole idea of that whole like scared straight thing to maybe finally have it to where these bullies will no longer be bullies anymore, or eventually they'll just kind of kill everybody off anyways. And that could be like the ultimate plan that he could really have here. Like, so we have Steven and we have Randall that are also kind of contemplating keeping certain women alive, so eventually they can sleep with them because, like, definitely want to go on and try to impress some girls and whatever, and like as long as they never really know what the real true story was, then like they can go on and win certain characters over. But since Ever is to all of a sudden be in this drug induced kind of in and out of it, to where she's hearing this whole story, we go on and we find out that the biker guy is to unmask himself and be a guy named Chip, who is to also remind both Randall and Steven that at one point he was to get bullied at school, and that, like, hey, if you guys are to ever think that this just kind of goes away, it never does. It always sticks with you. And so, like, like, you guys gotta go on and really just drill it into these guys that it's like to really just stop doing this. And Chip is to mention that at some point he was to have gone into prison before, but it was for, I guess, a very brief stint. So, and we kind of have it to where Steven is very worried that he might go to prison for all this at the end of it all, because they can go on and find a number of things out, or probably find drugs in certain people's systems, because eventually Chip is to reveal that he had gotten this drug from Burning Van, not Burning Man, Burning Van, and like it's a certain location that is to have like these weird concoctions of drugs. So we have it at some point where Steven and Randall are to go off and have this cage filled of all the people who had been drugged and who had supposedly become like zombies, and they're all caged in this one little area. And so we have it to where Randall is to go on and re-find a lot of the people who are left and tell them that Ever is dead, and that Ever has turned. And Steven is going on and eventually wanting to drug all the people who are left in this cage to eventually have the people who are left kill them all off. So to eventually just kind of burn into these people that it's like, well, hey, like, there's nothing you can do. You just have to kill all these people off, so that way they can hide their secret. So we have Ever that is to slowly but surely slip out of this bus, and we have Chip that is going after her. But we go on and we have Ever who is to figure out a way to take Chip down and eventually run off to make it to this caged room where she is to stop all of her friends from killing all these other people that are just drugged. So Ever is to explain to Tamara, hey, believe everything that I'm telling you. These people are not really zombies, they're just drugged. And Tamara's like, I don't know, like, it seems like she's turning. And Ever is like, hey, like, I'm your best friend. Believe this story. And so, like, Ever is telling Tamara, like, hey, like, if you want to take down anybody, take down Randall. And take down Steven. So, we have Danny that is trying to convince the rest of these people that everything that that she, of course, is saying is true. So we go on, and Tamara is to believe Ever and smash Randall unconscious for a brief moment, and then Ever is to open up this cage and to pull Danny out, and eventually Hunt is to be slowly behind, and it seems like he is to have his faculties. So Steven is to get dumped into this cage where it seems that he's going to get torn apart by a number of people, and so Steven is to get his just desserts, and so now we have to refocus back on Randall. So we have, of course, where Chip was to go on and have this glove filled with all these needles upon it, as if he's Freddy frickin' Krueger, and wanting to just douse a bunch of people with drugs. So it seems that Ever is to find this glove and is to figure out that, like, the way to get even with Randall is to douse him with this glove and shove him down this flight of stairs. And I'm like, yeah, another flight of stairs part of a movie. I always enjoy that. So Randall is to go on and fall down this flight of stairs, and we're immediately thinking that, okay, like, he's done for, but then he comes back up this flight of stairs, and he's now seen to come up as this zombie character, and we're like, oh, okay, here's where the real battle happens. And not really. We just go on and just have a number of women that are all presented with these weapons to look really cool. And then I'm like, okay, hopefully there's something interesting coming out of this. But then we go on, and every single like punch or hit or like smashing with item ends up being done so close or so quickly that like we're just seeing like blips and blaps and things of that nature. But then all of a sudden we go on and also have these POVs just like randomly plopped together of all these people that are just kind of looking on. And I'm like, what the is this? What the is this big battle that ended up just being like really? And then they just did this like weird goofy effect as if somebody is to go on and want to like portfolio like this moment, just like, hey guys, I did some special effects here, I did some editing, I did some weird Snapchatty move that I'm like, what the is this? Did you just showcase all people's reactions of what all they're doing at this goofy time? I'm like, what is this? What an odd like take me out of the moment where you're supposed to be showing like a fight going down, and instead you're just like, it's just absurd the way that they went about this. So we go on and we finally have it to where Ever is to finally have this sword that she uses the handle end, and it's a swing and hit and knock Randall unconscious. And so Ever and her group of students are all to go on and tie up every single one of these bad guys, and then are to eventually make their way back uh, to, I guess, civilization when they go and take the bus that is not actually broken down, and take every single student that is to seemingly be okay now that is going through withdrawals from this drug, get back onto the bus and find out that even the teacher is now just okay. That he's just kind of hurt, but then he's like, what the fuck? And like, that's how the movie just ends. And I'm like, wow, this movie, man, there was something there, but it just got snuffed out by generic. And so yeah, it's just like, man, what a like, there was something, but like not enough of something to where I would go on and just say, everybody watch this movie. Because and at the end of the day, hopefully I covered most of this film, uh regardless of how curmudgeoned I was about it. uh there was just those moments where I was like, man, this is cool. The whole drug idea thing, man, that was sweet. um like changing the fact that instead of it just being a zombie movie, it's kind of more of like a Scream movie where like there's certain people under a drug kind of control. And I thought that was such a cool idea. um like really just made me go on like, wow, there's some real potential here. We also had the moment where the bus driver was to come back awake after Randall had supposedly beaten him to death with this wood piece. He wakes back up and he goes on to tackle Danny through this glass window, and they are to supposedly have fallen to their death. But instead, we end up seeing Danny, who's kind of like popping and twisting, and he eventually becomes a zombie. And he goes on to just kind of walk it off. And like, that was a really cool moment also. And I just wanted to just mention that because I feel like I've forgotten that. But like, there was also the one moment where like Ryan was making his way to kind of see all the mannequins, and then eventually was to see like the mirror reflection of the bus driver, and then the bus driver was coming in and trying to attack all these people. And so it seemed like this complex was like made to eventually have a number of these guys all come in and eventually attack all these people. There was no real true escape because these guys had planned everything to a T, to where this bus driver was involved with it the whole entire time, where the bus driver was smashing all the cell phones So eventually, ever when she was to go and want to find these cell phones, she realized they were all broken. And so it seems that Ever was to be so upset, or Ever. It seems that this bus driver was so upset with this teacher that eventually he was to go on and want to take it out on all these kids. And so eventually at the end of this, it just becomes this Scooby Doo tying up thing where, like, hey guys, here's the reveal of all these characters, because here's who they really are. Um, but yeah, so with that said, I think I'm just going to get out of here to kind of quickly make this a done deal thing. At the end of the day, hopefully I covered most of this movie because I know I eventually had to kind of eventually rehash some things and eventually go back to certain moments. But yeah, I think for the most point, most of this is covered, so I'm just gonna call it a day. Anyways, goodbye everybody. Bye everybody.